Am I supposed to be looking at you, at that? Am I just over here doing my thing? Welcome back to the podcast. On today's episode, the most important 30 minutes of your life. That's saying a lot, Doc.
We got it going on today. Let me get my headphones on and we'll get right to it. We got Pastor Mike in the house.
We got Dr. Parker in the hood.
And here we go.
Boom, bam, bang, bang. Boom.
Headphones in place.
The most important 30 minutes of your life.
These will be the most important 30 minutes of your life.
Coming up right here.
Right now.
Well, come on.
Last week, I think it was last week. So the last week or the week before, does it really matter?
Nope.
Because the person listening right now didn't just jump off last week's video. So why am I clarifying all of this?
You're living in the past.
Last week, when we were talking, towards the end of the video, we were talking about a quote by Tom Thibodeau and kind of making fun of it in a sense. Well, not in a sense, we're making fun of it. But who you are is the sum of your experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And I prattled on a little bit about that, but I wanted to take a moment to really break that down for people.
Okay.
Because there's truth in the statement, but then beyond that, there is power.
Mm-hmm.
So the quote exists and lives out there because people believe it. But they believe it as a static truth. Like, well, I am who I am. I am the sum of my memories.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. I am the sum of my experiences. And then you get these arguments. You know, you're not your worst moment in life.
Sure.
But let's break this down. Who you are is the sum of your experiences. True? Generally?
This is where people get stuck in the whole, I am who I am. This is just me. This is I was just born this way.
And people try to kind of blend it all. And they're like, well, there was a reason I went through that season, or, that's just part of who I am. I have to accept it and live with it. I can't run from it. But if you break that sentence down with other truths that we know. So, for example, who you are is the sum of your experiences. Well, what's an experience? An experience is how you feel and the meaning you give a situation. So what was the experience like? And some people will talk about how it felt, and some people will talk about what it meant. So your experience is how you feel or the meaning you give a situation. So feelings and meaning are derived from how you think, how you perceive, your perception, your perspective on things. If your perspective is this is going to suck, then you'll feel miserable about the situation.
Sure.
You will have a miserable experience and you will give it a meaning of a waste of time.
Two people walk into a theater, they see the same movie. One person goes in expecting it to be a great movie. The other one goes in expecting it to suck. And they probably have the experience that they walked in expecting. Something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, how many times, guys, how many times has your wife said, hey, let's go do this tonight? And you're like, this is going to suck. And then you go and you're miserable and she's yelling at you for sitting in the corner, being a bump on the log, and you're just suffering, struggling all the way through. Well, it sucks, not because it sucks. We've hammered that dog to death. You can't, other things can't control you.
Right.
You can't control the other things. They can't control you. So how you experience things is based on your perspective, your perception, how you perceive things. So if you are the sum of your experiences, and your experiences are how you feel or what meaning you give a situation, and your feelings and the meaning you give situations derives from your perspective. You see where I'm going with this?
Mm-hmm.
Well, a perspective is simply how you think.
Mm-hmm. And one of my favorite quotes that I've gotten from you is that your perspective is either your power or your prison.
Yep.
And there's so much truth to that.
Your
So much
perspective
truth to that.
is your power or prison, because how you see things is either going to cause it to be a miserable experience or cause it to be something else. But your perspective is how you think. And that's what this whole podcast is about. This whole video series about, the books are about, is you can change how you think.
Yep.
So if you can change how you think, then you can change your experiences. And if we go back to that original true statement, who you are is the sum of your experiences. Well, if you can change your experiences, then you can change who you are.
You can change your life.
Change your life, change your identity. Because, you know, how many times has something bad happened in your life and you were miserable while it was happening, and then a year later or 2 years later, you look back and say, wow, I'm so glad that happened.
Right.
Or if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be here. Your perspective of the past changed.
Yep.
So the past is not static and forever a thorn in your side. You can change how you perceive the past. And so you can change your perspective, which means you can change your experience, which means you can change who you are. And thus, you know, this is one of the things that people kind of rail against the Bible, or if I mention something in the Bible, you can see them kind of, their eyes glaze over like, oh, here we go, holy roller. But it's not about being a holy roller and shutting down your thinking. It's about accessing wisdom and knowledge.
Yes.
So, for example, when I do research, and I haven't done research in quite a while, so when I did research, well, first thing I would do is I'd go out and read the body of knowledge. So the books I've written, they're not mine.
Sure. Yeah.
It's knowledge I have in my head, but I derived that knowledge from other books that people have written in the past.
Yeah.
So my knowledge is derived from books by other authors. Now, if you go read their books, as you read their books, you will see that they are drawing their conclusions. It is based on books they have read.
Yeah.
And those authors base their information. So as you start reading prior knowledge, you move into, from psychology today's cognitive behavioral, you move into Adler and Freud and Jung. And if you read Adler and Freud and Jung, then you'll start getting traces and hints of the great philosophers of the 16th century, Plato, and, you know, and as you read those, as you read the great philosophers, you know, Nietzsche, you start seeing references and shades from previous works. And in those previous works, you see references to the Bible.
Exactly.
And so when I do research on a scientific project, I read what other people have written and look at their conclusions. Well, I don't just accept their conclusions, so I will look into the data that they used, and I will look into the references they use, and I'll go read those. And then once I read those, then I'll go back to the 30s or 40s and read. So everybody's writing something, everybody's putting forth knowledge that is based on knowledge that came before. And I've found in all that I do, it's really important to go back to the source. So like I did a lot of like child custody investigations. And so the court would give me a case, and the court's drawn some conclusions and hands me the case. Well, as I read the court's conclusions, are they right or wrong? I don't know.
Right.
So I look at the data the court used to draw its conclusions. And so there's one particular case I'm thinking about. I get this guy, court has drawn some conclusions. What did they base their conclusions on? Well, I looked at the investigator's report that the court relied on. And as I'm reading the investigator's report, they've drawn conclusions. Well, where did they get their conclusions? So I look at their witnesses they spoke to and the documents they read. And so I pull those up, and there's witnesses. So there's a quotation by 2 or 3 witnesses that the investigator based their conclusions on, which the court then based its conclusions on. Now it's sitting on my desk. So when I look at the witness statements and the documents that the first investigator read, I pull those documents and I make a list and I call those witnesses. And lo and behold, the witnesses say, that's not what I said.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
I don't know how they got that from our conversation, but that's not what I said. And I look at the documents, and the documents, you could take them one way, you take them another, but when you put it in the context of what the witness has said and are ready to go to court and swear, I didn't say that. This is what I'm saying. And now the whole thing looks differently. But if I hadn't have gone back into the previous sources, my understanding of things would be based on skewed or faulty information.
Sure.
So when we are studying things, if you want to change your life, if you want to become a better person, if you want to rid yourself of depression and anxiety, and you're out there reading books and studying things, it only makes sense to start going back and looking at the sources in the past. And all knowledge traces back to the Bible.
Yep.
The OG.
Yep.
And so it's not about, being a Bible thumper, but it's about seeking out the original source of information. And if you go back into the Bible, as we're talking about this stuff, 2 Corinthians 10:5, Paul said, take captive every thought. How great is that? Every second of every day you are thinking, every second of every day is an opportunity for your thinking to go off the rails, or for you to make sure that you are thinking clearly, correctly, rationally, based on facts. Take captive every thought. Most people think they can't control the thinking. They think, I have to think about everything that drops into my head. I have to think about it. And that's not true.
I got to deal with this stinking thinking. It's not true. And the reality is we can control our thoughts by taking them captive, but it takes an intentional effort. It's a process of learning. Solomon, talk about wisdom. Just go into Proverbs. Go into Ecclesiastes.
Well, Tom Thibodeau, it's on Facebook, it's on memes, it's cross-stitched and stuck on walls of old ladies. Who you are is the sum of your experiences. Go to Proverbs. Proverbs 23:7. As a man thinketh, so is he.
Yep.
Who you are is dependent on how you think. Boom.
That is a boom moment right there.
And since we can change how we think, we can change our experiences. As we change our experiences, we can change how we experience life, how we enjoy life, how we enjoy any moment. Any moment can be your prison.
Yep.
Or any moment can be your power.
Yep.
Yeah.
And in those moments, when you start changing how you experience those moments, you begin to change who you are.
So begin to recognize, this is something that I have tried to put into application myself. Start to pay attention to what you're thinking. Because we're always thinking. You pushed back on me that overthinking isn't actually a thing.
Right.
I agree. I'm getting there. But I'm agreeing more. Because the reality is we're always thinking.
We are always thinking. Now, how we think.
Yeah.
And that's where people say, I'm overthinking it. Well, that's because they're worrying and they're jumping to conclusions and they're imagining things that have not yet occurred. And
Yeah.
and they're imagining what other people have thought or what they're going to do. Well, that's just insane.
Well, we never make that statement, I'm just overthinking it in a positive way.
Right.
We never think about, I'm overthinking how wonderful that's going to be. It's always how bad it's going to be.
We're going to go to Disney. We're going to ride the rides, and the wind's going to. There'll be nobody in line. You're overthinking this.
Yeah, just stop me. I'm overthinking it. No, it's always negative. Always negative. And so, if we're overthinking, if we're even thinking we're going there, we're headed in a negative direction. So stop right there. If you need to take 30 seconds to recenter your thoughts, but do exactly what Paul says. Take it captive. Take it captive, and you control it. It doesn't control you.
Yes.
Take it captive and do with it what most likely needs to be done, and that is to discard it. And now turn it in a better direction.
Flip it.
Yeah.
Just
exactly.
flip it. They're not going to like me. You know what? I'm thinking they're going to love me.
How many job interviews would go so much better?
Oh yeah.
How many reunions, family reunions, how many scenarios will go so much better if we will flip it.
Yes.
And turn it into a positive before it even gets there. Before you show up, you've already headed there mentally with a positive approach.
Boom.
Oh, that's worth the price of admission right there.
This is the most important thing for anybody to get. The most important thing for anybody to get.
Yeah.
Because the rest of it builds on this.
Yep.
You control you. You control what you think, what you feel, what you do. You control what you think, what you feel, what you do. That is a truth that is inarguable. It does not matter the situation or the circumstances. It does not matter what other people say, do, or think. You can't control those things. You control how you perceive what is happening in front of you, which then controls your experience and brings to mind what to do, how to respond to what's happening. And you can plan out, like you were saying, you can plan out your responses.
Yeah.
Instead of thinking this is going to go negatively, think this will go positively. Now, negative things may occur along the way.
Sure.
They may say, no. Okay, well, how will I respond?
Right.
Or I may ask them to buy this, and they may say, no. Well, what will I do next?
Mm-hmm.
So I have total control over what I think, what I do, what I feel.
Yeah.
Ergo, I have total control over who I am.
Yeah. I mean, in sales, that no can either be a hard no or a soft no that can turn into a yes based on how you respond.
And that's biblical. Because if it's a hard no, as a salesperson, what do? You keep chasing them. You keep hammering at them. Show up at their door 3 times a day. It was a hard no.
It's one approach. No, you shouldn't.
What did Jesus say do? If they don't receive you, knock the dust off your sandals.
Gotcha.
Move on. This customer isn't going to work out. How much time am I going to waste chasing a hard no versus going and find other opportunities?
Yeah.
All knowledge traces back to the Bible. So studying the Bible is not about being a Bible thumper. Studying the knowledge is accessing the original source of wisdom and knowledge that everything else out there is completely built on.
Yeah.
And you are robbing yourself if you're not doing it.
Most of our Bibles, and just about everybody has a Bible. Most people have 2 or 3.
Right.
But they're all sitting there with dust on the covers. And the most incredible source of wisdom is right there collecting dust.
And we have access to every bit of knowledge in the universe at our fingertips, in our phones, in our laptops, and our desktops. What does this mean? You type that in to a search engine, and it will come back with 10,472,000 hits.
Yep.
Like, bruh. You have access to all the knowledge and wisdom of the universe. Take advantage of that.
Yep. And that is truly indeed life-changing stuff. Right there. Boom.
Boom. Thank you guys for tuning in today.
That deserves a very high praise. One more.
Rewind, listen again, rewind, listen again, rewind, listen again.
Okay, I will.
We will catch you guys next week. I'm Lance.
I'm Mike.
I'm Mike. This is
Have an awesome week.
Woo!